I like the education system here for younger kids. I don't like it for older kids. Their grandparents have never supported us from the first interaction.
May I ask what's your name, where you come from, and what do you do here?
My name is John Love, and I've been in Taiwan for 11 years. I'm currently a student studying to be a programmer, and I'm just doing that out of my home. So yeah, that's what I've been doing lately.
You've been studying throughout the 11 years?
So for the past 10 years, I've been an English teacher like most, and after having kids for a few years, my oldest is 5 years old, I started to realize that teaching English it pays the bills, but it doesn't leave a lot left over if you're living in a city here. So I decided that it's time to make a change, and I never really loved teaching English from the beginning. I was good at it, at least according to my managers and coworkers, but I never had a passion to do it. And I just started burning out, and I knew it was time to make a change.
What's the plan for the future then?
My future plans, my goal would be to get a job working remotely from a Canadian company while staying here. And I hope to be able to do that. I like the education system here for younger kids. I don't like it for older kids. So I'm hoping that before my oldest is in middle school, we can make a change. That being said, the change will never be to go back to Canada. I hope to move forward. Maybe Australia is the goal in my mind right now. That could always change. Europe is always on the table. So that's what I'm focused on now, is just getting to a place where I can make that realistic.
Why do you choose to come to Taiwan?
I was on a world tour, so to speak. I was just checking out different places. I have been fortunate enough to get a little bit of money from an unfortunate situation, and I took that to see a lot of places, and I ended up in Thailand, and I really liked it there. I met up with a bunch of couch surfers for an event, and there was Singaporeans, Filipinos, Taiwanese, Thai, a little bit of everyone from Asia, and they were all super nice, super friendly. I loved the vibes that I was getting. I loved just everything that was going on. I loved being able to afford everything around me. So I made a post on Facebook to my old friends. I asked my new friends, I said, you know, if I wanted to kind of keep this going, maybe find work, where would you recommend I go? And everybody said, go to Taiwan. And I said, why Taiwan? They said, I've heard it's good. I said, have you been there? Everybody said they've never been here, but they've heard good things about it. So I just came on a whim, and I wasn't sure what to expect. I wasn't sure if I'd stay, but I ended up falling in love with it, and everything just worked out.
You talked about kids. How is it like raising a kid in Taiwan as a foreigner?
I've actually been doing this on my own for a few years. I'm a single dad here with 2 kids. It's a lot to take on because I don't have a lot of support. That being said, I actually tried to go back to Canada with my kids, thinking I would get a lot more support, and it wasn't there. So I realized that I might as well be on my own in a place I actually enjoy, where the weather's actually decent, and I can afford living. So we decided to come back just recently, actually, and we're definitely not regretting coming back. We regretted going to Canada to try that out. We went back last December. We came back here in July, so we were there for 8 months, and it was 8 months of hell.
What could maybe 1 or 2 main factors that influence you to come back to Taiwan rather than staying in Canada?
The main factors were probably weather is a huge one. I do not like the cold. Another really big one was the education for my kids. So my son's been in kindergarten here since he was in K1, 小班, and everything was really good. He was taught manners, he was taught how to behave himself on a day-to-day basis, he was taught how to respect those around him. Some people might think it's a little over the top, but I think it's a good thing for that age to be learning. And when we were in Canada, that didn't exist. He was in a preschool there, and he was allowed to run around. He came home yelling at me, no respect whatsoever. And I was like, where did you get this from? He's like, well, that's just how we treat our teachers at preschool. And I was like, are you serious? Like, that is not okay.
So you talked about not getting enough support. The mom or maybe the grandparents are not supporting.
Their grandparents have never supported us. From the first interaction, they didn't like me. They told me outright. To be fair, it was a bad time to meet them because she was my girlfriend and she was pregnant. So that's how we met, was telling them, hey, I'm the father of your daughter's soon-to-be child. And that was our first interaction. So obviously it wasn't a good start, and I understand that. But their first reaction to me was, okay, we're not helping you with anything. We're not going to watch your kids. We're not going to give you money. We're not going to do anything for you. Which, from my understanding of Taiwanese culture, was very backwards to what I expected. And it basically played out to be true. So that was pretty rough.
You talked about leaving Taiwan probably in the future. What's the main reason why you want to leave Taiwan?
So the biggest reason is because the kids' education. In Taiwan, I mentioned before that the preschools, the kindergartens, they do a good job of teaching kids and getting them ready for society in general. But once they start to get to the upper grades, middle school, high school, they brainwash them. They brainwash them super hard to just listen to the teacher. I've taught English here for 10 years, and the teachers are like, you gotta write A this way. I'm like, but A doesn't need to be written that way. It can be written anyway. There's no wrong way as long as the result's okay. You're not allowed to have opinions here. You know, if you write a report like, is this a good thing? What does the teacher think? That's your answer. What does the teacher think? My teacher thinks this is a good thing, therefore it's a good thing. There's no thought behind it. You just need to give them the answer that the teacher wants. It's full of brainwashing. If you look around at the work culture here, I don't want that for my kids, and that starts from about middle school. And that's the biggest reason I want to take my kids away from Taiwan, is because I don't want them to grow up in that atmosphere. I think that Taiwanese people are great, but when it comes to working, you guys, no offense, but you guys are all cowards. You don't know how to stand up for yourself. You don't know how to say, no, I'm not going to do this. 3 days for vacation on my first year at a new job is not acceptable. You should have at least 2 weeks. That should be just a given thing. But because of that, again, that's like the government pushing too. It's brainwashing them to stay at a job. You have to be loyal, because if you want vacation days, you have to stay at this job for at least 3 years to get a decent amount of vacation days. So you can't change jobs. You can't say no to your boss, because if you piss him off, then you got to start your vacation days over. That's just one factor, but that's a pretty big factor in my books. And I've had lots of people say, but I want my vacation days. I've got my Chinese New Year bonus. It's up to 2 months now. So they're using these things to control you. If everybody works unanimously to say no, this is not acceptable. And I think Taiwanese have the ability to do that. If you look at the sunflower movement from like 8 years ago, I think, everybody worked together to get things changed. But nobody wants to work together on this one. Like, I went to my secretary at the last school I was working at, and I said, these conditions are unacceptable. It was about my son's teacher was forced to stay home because of COVID. And it was past the government's restrictions. We were told that we had to stay home for 1 week according to the government at that point in time. And our school said, no, 2 weeks. And I said, well, are you going to pay her for the 2 weeks? Because I think you should. And it turned into this whole thing, and I was trying to defend all of the employees, but all of the employees in that room were trying to defend the boss. And I couldn't understand it. And I said, please just set me up with the boss. I want to talk to her. I don't want to talk to you guys. I don't want to put this on you guys. But you guys, I don't see the boss. I never see him. Working atmosphere, working culture in Taiwan sucks, and I don't want it for my kids. So that's why I want to have them leave before they get to that brainwashing.
Okay. What is one main cultural difference between Taiwan and Canada?
One of my favorite ones that's not commonly spoken about is when you're in North America, there's the suburbs, the rich areas, and then there's the poor areas, and it's very clear cut who you are with your social circles and where you live and what you do and all of that stuff. And one thing I really like about Taiwan is that it's very mixed. You can live in a very broken down house that's not worth anything and live across the street for maybe a $5 million US mansion. and your neighbors, and you're all doing the same things, and you're all going to the same places, and there's not this huge. There are different places that have different levels in social class, but I think in general, the rich people and the poor people are all going to the same places to eat. They're all going to the same places to socialize. I mean, there will be different places. There's different levels of KTV and stuff like that. But in general, the things that you're doing are going to be the same. And maybe that's just because it's such a densely populated area and there's not a lot of space. But I've always found that that's a really cool factor, that you don't always have to feel poor or you don't always have to feel rich. You can just feel mixed in. You're not just the middle class. You can mix the middle class with the rich and the poor, and nobody's looking at you weird. Nobody seems offended by you being there doing that. So I think that's a really cool thing that's not commonly talked about.
How is it like living in Taiwan as a Canadian in general?
I think in general it's all overall very good. I was getting very depressed. Maybe I was burnt out with my job. Maybe I was, feeling lonely. I told you I went back to Canada in December, and that last few months I was just feeling terrible. And at the time, I probably was using a different mentality to do things. When I went back to Canada this time, I realized a lot of people focus on themselves, and when they do help you, there's not a price tag, but they're not very willing to help you. And here, sometimes there is a price tag on the help they give, but they're more than willing to do it anytime. Going back to Canada really gave me the proper reset that I needed. I came back here totally refreshed. I love it. I'm happy to eat the food now. Like before I left, I was like, I'm so sick of the food. But when I was in Canada, I was trying to cook it because I was so used to it. So, overall, it's good. Everything is good.
During your stay here in Taiwan, have you encountered any difficulties?
I think everybody has difficulties everywhere, but in terms of it being because I'm a foreigner, I've only had a few cases. I remember when I first moved from Taipei to Taichung, I wanted to rent a place, everything was good, and then the agent that I was working with, he said, okay, you're gonna have to give 3 months deposit. And I said, why? And he said, well, you can give me a guarantor instead, a Taiwanese guarantor, or 3 months deposit. And I said, but the standard is 2 months without a guarantor. Why do I need that? And so I asked around. I made sure that I asked around first, because I wasn't just gonna say like, okay, I understand it, or I'm not just gonna get angry and offended either way. So I asked around, and everybody said no. 2 months, no guarantor, or no months and a guarantor, or some sort of balance of that. And I said, why are you asking for 3 months? Well, the landlord says you're a foreigner and it's too risky for her. I was like, tell the landlord that I'm not renting her place. I'll find a better place anyways. And I ended up finding a much better place.
What advice would you give to a first-time visitor in Taiwan?
If you were coming here for the first time, I would say don't just do the things that are your typical easy to find website stuff. You go do a Google search and this is what comes up, and you go and do it. You can do the Taipei 101. These are okay things to do, don't get me wrong. Do those things, but also try and leave the main, the beaten path, the main path that everybody does. Try and strike things up. Don't go to the English pub in Taipei. It's a nice place, you can go there, but also go to a local bar if you can find one, if that's your thing. If you want to eat food, don't just go to the main night markets. Go to the smaller night markets that aren't, they're on Google Maps, but they're not on the foreign websites that are going to recommend. I think those places are much cooler than the big ones, and you're going to see a lot more of the real stuff, the real Taiwan.
Do you have anything else to tell Taiwanese people?
I think if I was talking to Taiwanese people directly, don't be so afraid of a bald head. It's not so bad. I would have to say that this is a small thing, but I just moved to Donggang, and it's in Pingtung. It's way better than Kenting. Come here and check it out. It's not utilized the way it should be, but I think that if more people came here and saw it, they would see that it's got everything that Kenting has, but it's much closer to Kaohsiung or the HSR and the highway that Kenting is. But it's got almost all the same stuff. Everything here is great. I definitely recommend it.
All right. Thank you very much, and welcome to Taiwan.